I have literally traveled the globe in search of nature's best. And here, in Western Canada, might be one of the most beautiful and important natural habitats in North America. Stretching along the majestic Rocky Mountains, this is the Eastern Slopes in southern Alberta, Canada. This small piece of pristine wilderness is the last 1% of the northern Great Plains that still has a full complement of wildlife. Animals like the grizzly bear, cougars, wolves, deer, all call this place home. It's also a landscape full of rare flowers and grasses, with many of those species living here and only here. And its importance in the natural world cannot be overstated. This is really a story about nature and development. Behind me is this incredibly beautiful wild landscape that's been kept beautiful and wild by the ranchers that have lived here for over 100 years. But about 30 or 35 years ago, it was nearly turned into a subdivision. And if it weren't for a few key players, that may well have happened.
This band along the edge of the Rockies behind me, although it looks big, actually is only about 1% of the northern Great Plains that's still fully functional.
Meet Larry Simpson. Born and raised in these parts, he is very aware of how special this place is. He also works with the Nature Conservancy of Canada. And for the last 20 years, it has been his passion, his goal, to try and save this natural paradise from development.
It has a remnant of wildlife populations that existed right from the last ice age until the buffalo disappeared. Bears, wolves, and cougars, all sustained by the big space. Truly a unique place, as unique as the Serengeti of Africa. This is this little tiny piece that's left here, and we're struggling to try and make sure it's available for future generations.
My mother used to tell me, don't judge people, but I can't help but have one way to judge people, and that is how they relate to the land. It seems such an important thing to me, is how do we really relate to the land?
Meet Charlie Russell, conservationist, rancher, and all-around good guy. His home, which he calls the Hawk's Nest, is a modest cabin sitting high above the valley. Charlie was a part of the very first group of locals who decided to save this area before it was too late. That was 1972. And 40 plus years later, he's still at it.
Yeah, I've lived on this land all my life. My grandfather homesteaded here in 1905. The place has always been part of my life, and it's been very important to me because it's taught me how to relate to the land, I think.
How would you explain this kind of place to somebody who's never been here before? How would you describe it to them?
God's cathedral. I just find that it's the most moving, emotionally moving place to come out here, and you just feel like, oh, that's all that's needed. Yeah, it's breathtaking.
Just like Charlie, Tracy Latham calls this place home and currently manages a ranch in the area. Like Charlie, she believes this area needs to be saved and thinks a good place to start is how ranchers like her relate to the land.
I had lived in the Northwest Territories in the late 80s, early 90s, and when I came back down south, I was really shocked by the fragmentation. There was no wild spaces. So to find this Front Range is as wild as you'll find down here.
Man has to have some brakes on when we come to our land use. We tend to use it too much. we tend to use more than our share of things. And so we need places that aren't developed, because the rest of the things that live here need to continue to live here. Especially animals like bears. People are so out of touch, they're so afraid that they can't live with those animals. So if there are people around you, you pretty well don't have bears.
This whole idea of a relationship with nature, especially grizzly bears, is a big idea, and it's one that Charlie knows something about. You see, about 20 years ago, Charlie and his partner built a cabin on the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia. Here they took orphan grizzlies and reintroduced them to the wild. And the reason he did that was to try and teach people that humans and grizzlies can live together. And since the Eastern Slopes is big bear country, the idea of harmony, our ability to live side by side with animals like bears, is key to saving this place.
There's many examples of how we're forcing out wildlife and birds and everything. It's we are a scourge on the world, and we have to have a different relationship with nature, or we're in trouble. I think we are already in trouble, and places like this show some intelligence of not being too greedy.
The ranching economy that was here was vital to keeping that space intact. By about the mid-1990s, the ranch economy, the economics of ranching, couldn't compete anymore. And so the die is cast. Ranchers are not selling to ranchers. They're selling to people who are going to build homes. And this fragmentation of the last 1% is now unfolding before our eyes. And I'm feeling like we're in a race to see how much of this land can we keep intact and functional to inspire us, our kids, our grandkids.
For over 40 years, a group of people have been trying to save this last 1% of the northern Great Plains. Change can happen quickly. This was the size of this special landscape. Today, only a sliver remains.
If we were talking about the last 1% of the Serengeti, would people be motivated? I'm sure the world would say, oh my goodness, don't let that happen, let's get involved. Here we sit in North America, and arguably in Canada, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and we're talking about the last 1%. And if we can't find a way to address that, then what does that say about all the other environmental challenges we're going to have in the world? Is this a priority for our society or not? I'm hoping it will be.
I hope that people can reconnect with nature. It's a big thought, but we become so disconnected from everything to do with nature. It's a problem in our lives. There's less and less of the world that we can really go out and connect with nature. We really are a part of nature. We just have to decide what part we want to be, whether we want to be a positive part or a negative part.
This is an incredibly important effort. I've been following this project since the mid-1990s. And when I think about the importance of preserving this last 1% of the remaining habitat that exists here, it's a project that we simply can't fail on. We have to make it work. We have to work together, not just for the grizzly bears and the wolves and the elk and everything else that comes with this incredibly wild landscape, but I think we need to do it for us. We need to do it for people. It's part of who we are. It's our heritage. My hat's off to all those people that have been working so hard to bring this project forward, to making it work.